Democrats and Republicans. Really quickly, I'm going to tell you a story about one of my really good friends. About 5 years ago, he went on his honeymoon, and he went to Australia. And one of his favorite sites that he told me about, the whole trip he loved, but this particular one was, I guess, his favorite, and that was the Great Barrier Reef. And the Great Barrier Reef is one of Australia's main attractions. It's beautiful. There's tons of crazy color that you would never see anywhere else on reefs. There's exotic fish. Some species of the fish are some that you will never see in any other place in the world. And that was part of the trip that he really enjoyed. Last summer, he took his family there, and what he experienced wasn't the same. He experienced that there wasn't as many colors. Parts of the reef were gone, and some of the fish weren't there, and that saddened him a little. When he came back, he told me about his experience, and I, a little uneasy, told him that it was all because of global warming. And so you need to know about global warming because it's happening right now. It's happening everywhere, and it's happening whether you want to or not. And so in this speech, I will argue that you should support the Australian carbon tax plan. And so first I'm going to go over that, of course, because of greenhouse emissions, it's posing a threat to the world. Secondly, I will argue that the Australian carbon tax plan will decrease greenhouse emissions. And thirdly, I will argue that U.S. independent action is enough to impact the world in the global crisis for global warming. And so first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the threat that we have with greenhouse emissions. Currently, it's an estimated about 391 parts per million, and it's substantial. But considering that if we were to stop all greenhouse emissions in 2013 and wait until 2100, it's only 21 to 27 estimated parts per million, which is equal to about 1% increase. Now, 1% increase doesn't sound like a lot, but considering that 12% is all we need to end the human race, all ecosystems and everything aside, it's pretty substantial. I mean, that's devastating for me, and so I know it's devastating for everyone else. One of the things we have going on right now is our natural disasters that we see with Hurricane Sandy, and we've seen the past with Hurricane Katrina and other global epidemics. And one thing that will happen with this, with an increase in the heat and the overall temperature, will be more epidemics, bigger catastrophes, larger cities, and mass chaos in the streets. Moving on to my second point, I'd like to argue that the Australian carbon tax plan will decrease these greenhouse gases. And basically the way it does it is the 300 largest corporations we have in the U.S. Would be taxed $24 per parts per ton is what they measure it in. And it would charge them that amount. And it can be passed down to the consumers through goods and services. So if you have been purchasing something that's made or the service uses the burning of fossil fuels, that's what you'd be taxed on. Another part of it is the part of it is creating a green, sustainable energy source. And when you tax something like that, it charges them money, and they don't want that. So what it kind of does is motivates them to find a renewable energy source that they can step away from burning fossil fuels and putting more into the air, like they did with hybrid cars when they went from gas to electric. This is kind of what they're hoping that will happen, is that big corporations are not going to want to spend the money that they're spending on taxes for carbon, and so what they're going to do is invest more into finding this renewable source, the sustainable source, and move that way. And that will be really helpful, I think. And so, moving on to my last argument, the U.S. Independent action is enough to impact the world globally in this epidemic. And the reason that is because the U.S. has a big influence on the rest of the world. Recently it's been shown that Europe and the United States were tied neck and neck for greenhouse gas emissions, and now we're lower, and so that puts us down. But one of the things is if we have two major countries, Australia and the United States, that are on the same plan, it kind of puts an influence and puts a positive notion for others like Europe, China, and India to all hop on board with this plan. Because it's estimated that within the next year or so, China's emissions alone will equal out to the world's in total, and because of their mass population. And so with having everyone on board, we can slowly decrease emissions. And with also emissions comes economic growth. And because of the tax will shorten our deficit that we have in the U.S., and that's also something that people or countries all over the world want. And so in the speech, I've argued they should support the Australian carbon tax plan. I've argued first that greenhouse emissions pose a threat to the world. Secondly, I argued that the Australian carbon tax plan will decrease greenhouse emissions. And thirdly, I argued that the U.S. independent action is enough to impact global warming. And so I hope that you all decide to support the Australian carbon tax plan, because stuff like Yosemite National Park and other national parks around the U.S. would also be affected by stuff like this. And my friend had a bad experience when he went back to Great Barrier Reef, and I hope that our future generations get to experience this and get to experience all of our natural inhabitants we have in the U.S. And I know that the carbon tax plan might not sound like the solution, but it's better than we have now. And I think that it's a great step forward from where we are today. And so thank you for your time.